Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Crushing Strongholds. This is a podcast where we turn pain into power, trauma into triumph, and a place where we get to be a better person, get to be the best person that we actually can be. How do we do that? We do that by exposing lies from the enemy, and we also do that through testimonies. Your testimony can dismantle strongholds. Everybody in the world, I believe, faces some kind of stronghold at one point or another in their lifetime. Today, I'm super excited. I have an amazing guest. Super excited that he was actually willing to come on here and share his testimony and his story. Um, he's lived a very adventurous life, and I'm super excited to have him. His name is Dan Esposito, and he has been, he played NFL. Watched one of his plays earlier. I'll tell you all about that in a little bit after I introduce him, but I just can't wait to bring him on so he can say hello. So, Dan, welcome in, and thank you so much for being here today.
Mickey, thanks so much. I really am happy to be here and share my story with your audience.
Yes, I'm so excited. I've been looking you up and trying to watch all your football plays from back in the day, and I'm telling you that one in 1994 is like I could have been a cheerleader on the sideline because I was so excited when you did that 63-yard touchdown. I was like, and then they're like, yeah, that was his third one of the game so far, and I was like, what? That's crazy. It's amazing. I love sports. Um, I'm not a huge guru of sports, but I like sports. I love going to watch the game. I like baseball and basketball and volleyball. So I'm kind of like versatile in the sports realm of everything. But the thing I love about your story is that even though you were playing football, something happened to you and you had to take a different path. And I just really can't wait for you to share with our listeners what that is and how that transpired. So do you mind sharing with us that testimony?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd love to. So we'll kind of start in the middle, kind of feed off of what you just mentioned. So what had happened to me, and what most of the doctors and surgeons wanted to blame my conditions on was my football career. But the reality is, I played 1 year of high school football. I didn't, we didn't hit very much, in that league. It was Philadelphia Public League, and then I went to college, and then I didn't start to the third game of my senior year. Should have started my junior year. There's some politics in the story I could get into at some point if you wanted, but I was supposed to start my junior year, and then with no practices before the first game, I got demoted to third string, and really just had a role of having the ball a couple times a game during that season if I was lucky. Most of them ended up with 60-plus yard touchdowns, but then I wouldn't see the ball again. Then my senior year, by the second game, our running backs, they just weren't performing, well. The first game, they didn't perform well. Second game, and then I got in the second half of the second game, had 100 and something yards. And then the third game I started, I was 300 and however many yards. I was offensive player of the nation for Division II. And that's when the NFL scouts started noticing, they send out people to watch you, to work you out. And about maybe 8 teams after that season come to personally work me out. I got picked up by the Redskins. And then interesting thing, in between my senior and freshman year of high school to college, I was working out with a quarterback who was going into his second season in the NFL. He was working out at the same gym I was working out because the guy who owned it was the strength coordinator for the Jets. And so I went out with this guy 5 or 6 times, and we throw. And he says at the end of our workout session, because you're pretty good. You can play in the NFL. So here I am, knowing that I was going to play in the NFL since I was in fifth grade. I just knew it, but only playing 1 year of high school football and going to a small Division II school. I kept that belief. Everyone doubted me. My first game was against him. It was a guy named Rich Gannon who he was playing for the Chiefs at the time. And so I was able to go across the field after the game and say, hey, I made it. But unfortunately in that game, I broke my jaw in 2 places. Played the
Oh,
entire game with a broken jaw in 2 places, told the coaches at the very end of the game, at that point, I mean, my face was swollen. I couldn't go. And they gave me an injury settlement. I came back the next year with the Saints, was punched in practice by a linebacker that I was beating in practice all the time. We had no helmets on, broke it again. They called me back, was in camp, got released. And then they signed me back the first week of the regular season. So I was with the Saints for part of the regular season. But at that point, that's when the injuries started, or not the injuries. It's just my shoulder at that point was just not healing. And you don't know what's under there, until you really study it. And it's taken me this time to really start figuring these things out. But most of what's happening when you're getting injured is just scar tissue. It's just these hardened proteins that need to be broken down that are activating pain receptors. But they go in and they do the injuries, the surgery. And that was kind of the end of my career. I got some calls from the XFL and some from Italian football leagues, but I just decided to get into work. But what had happened, it's still very flexible. Everything was fine. My shoulder was a little banged up, but over the years, just due to it really comes down to you're treating your body incorrectly. And most people who are in chronic pain want to blame it on other things like a genetic condition or, trauma from childhood, which isn't really, I suffered a lot of trauma in childhood. I was very flexible my whole life. And so I don't think that those things can contribute, but they're not the underlying factors. It mostly comes down to, our food or some type of injury that we may have had, like a car accident, a slip and fall, a surgery, something like that, that starts this scar tissue building process within the body. But, so going back, getting all of these chronic pain conditions, which was, degenerative arthritis, fibromyalgia, and then I was prescribed 4 joint replacements. I was also told I had spina bifida occulta, frozen shoulder, and restless leg syndrome.
Wow.
And the only treatments were, opioids and, surgeries and stuff like that. So they said at 50 years old, you're going to need to start your joint replacements. And so that wasn't good enough for me. But I want to kind of step back and talk about my faith in all of this process because, being a kid who grew up with physical abuse in his life, it's very easy to reject God and to say, how can there be a God when I'm going through all of this stuff? And that's kind of the same when you're in chronic pain as well. But there were 2 passages in the Bible from a very, very young age that I pointed to that I said, there cannot be a God for these 2 reasons. And it was, don't eat swine for it's unclean, and don't mix linen and wool. Those were the only 2 passages that made me doubt religion. And it turns out that those 2 things have massive implications in chronic pain and stiffness. So when you eat pig, it causes a process called glycation in the body. And that's a hard, sticky protein that causes more inflammation, oxidative stress, which are some of the other pain makers. And so your body can basically have 15,000 of these events happen per day. They're called, it's glycation is the event, leaves behind an advanced glycation end product, junk. So you're allowed 15,000 units of this junk. 3 strips of bacon is 90,000. So as you're eating bacon, what you're doing is you're causing this reaction within the body that's causing basically the way that barbecue sits on top of, chicken. You get that sticky, that's what's happening internally in the body. And then it creates more things that cause more pain and stiffness. So right, so definitely don't eat bacon because it's massively glycating. So this shirt that I'm wearing is polyester. It's only because I've had these created before I did this research. It's the only set of shirts that I have that are not natural fibers. Your body resonates at a frequency of 65 to 100 megahertz. This shirt is resonating at like 15 hertz. So what it means is it's stealing electrons from me. And that's causing a free radical inside my body, an unpaired electron, which causes oxidative stress, which causes inflammation, right? So when you mix, so linen is 5,000. So if you wear linen on its own, it's going to be healing you by adding electrons to pair the free radicals inside your body. Wool will do the same thing. But when you mix these frequencies, it becomes dead fabric. And it's now stealing electrons from you constantly, every second of the day, causing oxidative stress and glycation in the body. So once I started learning these things, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, maybe this religion thing is real. Like it's, I had heard like on another podcast, the CIA says that religion or the Bible is a self-help tool to keep the body clean for what's inside, right? And so I'm like, God, I need to read, because I've doubted the Bible my whole life. I should probably read it. Like I've never read it. So I
Good
started with
idea.
the Old Testament. Yeah, right. It's like how do you know your opponent or the enemy? And I don't want to say religion's the enemy. How do you know it if you don't know it? Right. And that's the same thing with pain. It's like you have to identify what the enemy is before you can start defeating it. So anyway, I start, listening on Audible, the Old Testament, and I start realizing, gosh, everything that we're doing, everything that we're eating, every way that we're thinking is against religion. And if religion is basically a way to keep your energy pure, which is what I really think it is. So when your energy is pure, you can ascend into the rest of the energy, the ether, the all of the universe. And what else is in here that I can learn to make me healthy? And obviously, fasting is
Mm.
in there. Gratitude, because gratitude and anxiety sit in the same place in the brain. So when you're giving your gratitudes, it's hard to feel anxiety. So when you're in chronic pain, of course, you're in a lot of anxiety because you're in a fight or flight process all the time. So it really turned everything around. And then kind of the final piece of it all was, of just the transformation is, I'm in the gym and I'm like, I'm a tough guy and I'm very competitive and, I'm 53 and I'm looking at these young guys. I'm like, oh, I'm stronger than that guy. Oh, I can, I'm like having these thoughts, like, what am I doing? Like, I want to be friendly with everybody. I want to have better energy. And I'm thinking like the music that I'm feeding my brain is also causing a set of anxiety that I'm maybe not conscious of. And so I started listening to spa music for about a month, and then I quickly was like, I can't do that. Then I remembered there's a Toby Mac song that I really liked that was very poppy, and was I Just Need You, and so maybe he's got more songs I can listen to. So literally, now 99% of what I listen to is contemporary Christian music. It's just changed who I am as a person and kind of centered me as the pain goes away. It just am creating like just a much more beautiful soul inside of myself that I'm like more proud of than I was before. And, it all comes down to energy. Then when you look at how I created my program, it's an energy transfer. When these things that we need to break down in the body, you're transferring an electron energy to the thing that needs to be broken down and then splitting it. So, yeah, so I just, the universe is energy, God is light, God is energy, and, it all just, you need to strive toward those pieces. And when you're in chronic pain, it's hard to like have a spiritual existence, I think. And I want to help people that, want to get more toward their spiritual center and less chronic pain and, live a much healthier, happy life.
Exactly. I know that after you did football, you became a world ranked sprinter. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I kind of put the two pieces together because you're running these, 63-yard touchdowns. It makes sense that you became a sprinter. They kind of go hand in hand. I think you were
yeah,
getting your training on the football field for your sprinting, but I think that with your program, I was looking at it and checking out, like I was telling you, there's a couple things that I was interested in learning about. I know that people our age are trying to find kind of like a quick fix, like, oh my gosh, I did all of this to my body, darn it. Now I got to go, what am I going to do to fix it? And I love that, bringing the Bible into it. I love that the fasting, because Daniel fasted. He did the 21-day fast. He did a modified fast. He didn't do an actual
right.
full fast, and then Jesus fasted, for 40 days, which he set the prime example for fasting, I believe, in the Bible as a whole, as a
Yeah,
realm, and which is impertinent. But I do also believe that, I know a lot of people say, I love that you brought in Old Testament opposed to New Testament, because a lot of people say, well, that's the Old Testament law. We can eat as much bacon as we want now. So it's funny because I love that you're going back to Old Testament for replenishing the body, because they were doing it back then. And then the law changed, and now everybody thinks, oh, we can do all this instead. Well, I think we
yeah,
should be sticking with the old way of doing things. Sometimes, the old remedies are better than the new pharmaceuticals, I believe, honestly. And
yeah.
so if you put those two together and you kind of like look at the whole picture, I mean, it's obviously in the Bible for a reason. It's very important information. And I do agree, like, pig, we're not supposed to be eating pork. We're not supposed, that's one of the foods that we should not be eating. But yet,
Right.
I'm not gonna lie, I had bacon yesterday,
Yeah,
you know,
yes.
and
I
it's like,
feel
and
guilty every time I look at it. I'm
yeah,
like, oh, I want it, but I'm like, yeah. And I've even knew it to Chat GPT. I'm like, is it a sin or just a suggestion? They're like, no, you should not be eating it. So,
yeah,
yeah, unfortunately, I'm picking it off everything that I come in contact with, but I do love the way it tastes.
Yes, I think that
Yeah,
it's funny when I think about fasting. I've fasted before. I did the 75 hard challenge. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
yeah,
That was really good. And I did during that challenge, I did intermittent fasting because I started there. I didn't think I could just deplete myself completely, so I just kind of decided to do it in based on hours, not based on days. So I don't know if that makes any
yeah.
sense to you. I don't know if that's effective or not. Maybe you could share on that what you think about
Yeah,
short-term or long-term fast?
let me talk about inflammation and fasting and how they kind of
Okay.
come together. So let's talk about what inflammation is, because most people think that inflammation is your body attacking itself, and it's not. It's your body healing itself. It's God's natural way of, like, you know, breaking down the damage that we do to the body. And so what is really important is that every single disease that ends in itis is just inflammation,
Hmm.
right? So you should, there's 800 of them. So you should know what inflammation is at the, the entire process. And there's only about 7 steps in the process. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about how fasting helps clean that up. So at the cellular level, your cell is attacked, right? And we talked about before we jumped on here is that your cell wall must be made up with a lipid wall of fats, omega-3 and omega-6. It should be a 1-to-1 ratio. So when that cell is attacked, it's a measured response, right? 4-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3 is sort of the max you should allow it to get to. The average American is 15-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3s. So that means the omega-6, like I said before, it's like calling the National Guard when there's just a cat in your garbage, right? You only
Right.
need to go out there and say shoo, and that's what the omega-3 is going to do. But like, hey, get out of here, right? But since there's so much omega-6s in our cell wall, it's this massive response. And so that's kind of like where these flares are coming from. That's the initiation of the flare. Then it starts alerting the C-reactive proteins, or the cytokines in the C-reactive proteins, and those are going to tag the offender so the white blood cells can come in and clean them, right? So you got that C-reactive protein, they're going to measure for rheumatoid arthritis, and then the white blood cells are going to come in while this clot is forming. A clot becomes a fibrin, right? They
Mhm.
call it insoluble protein, and they call it scar tissue. So once again, it's not scar tissue, it's a scab, right? But it's like a viscoelastic polymer. So if you think about a water bottle that's cheap and you squeeze it and it
Mhm.
cracks, but it doesn't break, that's the same thing with this scar tissue. It's going to move around. You're going to think your joints are cracking, but it's actually this fibrin. And then collagen comes in and weaves its way to support the area. The white blood cells give off lymph. The lymphatic system is going to help get rid of that. Red blood cells come back in the area. Now, the fasting part. Intermittent fasting is fine for weight loss, but it's not good for healing the body. You have to do 20 plus hours, right? You really I think the sweet spot for fasting is 3 days, right? Get through 3 days. Because once after that happens, for me, every time I've gone past that point, I don't notice as much of this activity that I'm going to describe happening. So what happens at 20 hours is the enzymes in your liver that are normally going to go digest food,
Mhm.
right, are like, okay, we're starved now. We're going to get into the bloodstream and look for proteins, misfolded proteins, protein aggregates, like a fibrin. It's going to add that electron, cleave it, they call it. Now it's cleaved, it's open, and now the body is going to start getting rid of it. Here's why it cannot be a magic pill. The body can only get rid of this enough that it can handle. It can't dump everything out at once. So the main goal is you got to break the thing apart. Then the body can start breaking it down. So all of the offenders that I talk about in my playbook, the main reasons for chronic pain, they all have this reaction that can happen that can break it apart, that then allows the body to start breaking it down even further. And then that's when you start healing yourself. So
Gotcha.
yeah, so you got to get past 20 hours. And here's the thing, that feeling that you have isn't a hunger pain. It's a body transformation event,
Mhm.
right? So don't think that, oh, I'm starving, I'm starving. No, you're not. Your body is transforming into a different system of burning fat and healing you, right? And that takes a shift. You got to get through that. That's the hard part, is once that hunger pain starts coming. push through that, and then beyond that is clarity like you've never experienced since you were a child. Like you will not believe how clear your brain will be working from that point, because it's literally just working off fat as its fuel source, right? And that's what it wants to be burning. And that's another thing when we talk about aging populations and statin use. Statin, it's taking the fat out of the brain, the cholesterol out of the brain, and it's giving it a steady state of carbohydrates. And that's how you get dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that. So if we ever want to do another podcast on statins and cholesterol, that's one that I'm very, very passionate about.
I
So,
actually would love that. I have 5 podcasts, so my other podcast is on dementia because I
oh,
take care
good.
of my grandma who's 95 with full dementia. She's had it for probably 7+ years, and she's in about stage 6, going into stage 7 of dementia. So we're kind of whittling down, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So
but
my suggestion, high fat diet, butter, ghee, some cod liver oil, maybe once or twice a week to help build those cells better, because your brain cells, when they have that imbalance, are going to be inflammatory in the brain as well.
right.
Right? It's going to be every single cell in your body. So making sure you get that balance of omega 6s to omega 3s is really, really crucial.
Mm.
Since I've started doing it, the noise in my brain has considerably been muted, right? Like I'm way more able to look people in the eyes in my conversations. I'm not, trying to get out of conversations so
Right.
quickly. It's a much calmer place to be once you start balancing those omegas out.
Yeah, I have 2 questions for you. One question is about the omegas. A friend of mine actually um, is working in the health industry like you are, and she has what's called a test. They have a blood test where they check all of these things, and they send you your printout. It's an at-home test. You send it in. It's a mouth swab, and then they tell you where you're at on your omega levels,
Oh, good.
and then
Okay.
they help supplement you with like essential oils and different stuff like that to help replenish or reduce whatever
Yeah.
you have too much of, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think about that? What do you think about those tests?
So I'm just learning about the test. That's something that I'm not sure exactly. I know there's a specific test, and there's some tests
Okay,
that don't measure it at the cell wall. So we want to make
okay,
sure that's being measured at the cell wall. So, the omega 6s are coming from our diet, right? It's the
right.
highly manufactured foods, like you'll see them. And it's also coming from our chicken, which most people don't realize. When you buy chicken from the store, that chicken, no matter if it's organic or not, is fed a heavy diet of grain and corn. That contains a lot of the linoleic acid, the omega 6s. So about 30% of the chicken is heavy in linoleic acid rather than, when a chicken is eating grubs and worms and things like that, the concentration will be much, much less. So we're getting a lot of it from there. So it's really, if you only need one piece of salmon per week to get the omega 3 amount that you need, the bioavailable. But you're also, if you just supplement twice a week and no more than twice a week with some cod liver oil, right? Because there's so much vitamin A in that, it can become toxic to your liver. So you got to make sure
Mm,
that you're not doing too much of it. And then eliminating, as much as you can. Like none of us are not going to eat French fries every once in a while, when we go to, get some chicken wings or whatever. And that's all in that really bad seed oil. The way I look at it is like, I created what's called the world's greatest shopping list. It has the 90 essentials that you need, your essential nutrients, your essential amino acids, minerals, and fats. And if you stick to that, and I have, food or like meal plans for free on my platform. If you stick to that as much as possible, right? And like say 80% of your diet is focused on this and 20% is just standard American, you're going to be in much better shape than you are now. Right, because you're going to be bringing those ratios down and eliminating the inflammatory glycating omega 6 foods out of your diet to a degree that you're not doing it now, right? So it all depends on your input into the system and how much you want your body to be in a state so that it can heal, right? I'm not going to say this is going to heal you. I'm going to get your body into a state where the body can heal itself more efficiently.
right.
Yeah.
One thing I was watching, and when I watched that podcast that you're on, the FYI I Am Damaged podcast. Something that you said that I really wanted to talk about with you today was, excuse me, is you were talking about how you had the anxiety and the depression and how you couldn't think clearly. And I
Yeah,
know we call that we use that term, we have brain fog, right? Like,
sure.
oh,
Yeah.
our brain is just foggy all the time. What would you suggest um, going into this topic? What do you do to eliminate that, the
Yeah.
anxiety part, the depression part, or
Yep.
just the fog itself? Because those can be all in one conclusive, or they can be individualized depending on what you're going through and what you're dealing with.
Yeah, it's usually like byproducts of a couple different things happening in your body. One, that cellular response, you want to make sure the omega-3, omega-6 ratio is balanced. That will do a lot. The other thing, so, I think that we are being made sick intentionally through our food, through our air, through our water. So if you look in our foods, in our manufactured foods, other than like the things that they're pointing out, which it's always look over here and don't look at what's really, you've got the dyes, right? And we know that the dyes are bad. But the other thing that they're not discussing as much is the folic acid and the seed oils that are in the system. So there's a couple reasons why they're bad. So the seed oils, for one, it's gonna, they're more susceptible to gaining, to getting heavier because they're more permeable membranes, more susceptible to having calcium channel open up and delivering calcium into the cell and calcifying your cells. Um, and then there's the folic acid. So folic acid drives fats into cells. So you've got this thing that's a low calorie thing, but it's actually making you fatter for one. But what folic acid is supposed to do, and for half of our population, this is where DNA plays a part in your health and your mental health. Um, and once again, DNA is never the underlying factor. It's how you're treating your DNA, unless it's a mutation, right? So when people say you have a genetic predisposition for something, unless they've tested your genes, they don't know what they're talking about. So the folic acid is supposed to convert into this other thing that's managing histamine at the mast cell. You've heard of mast cell activation
Yeah.
syndrome,
Hmm.
right? So folic acid converts to this other protein basically that modulates how much histamine is going off, but it doesn't make the conversion for most people, right? For 44% of the population, it will not convert because they have the MTHFR polymorphism, right? Which is a certain gene in the methylation cycle. But what happens now is folic acid sits on that folate receptor. So let's say you're eating some bread that's sprayed in this folic acid, and now you've eaten a salad. Well, the folate from the spinach can't utilize that folate receptor. And now histamine is just going off, and now you have anxiety, right? Histamine is the anxiety molecule. Homocysteine is the depression molecule, right? That and your serotonin receptors. But homocysteine builds up when there's too much histamine in the body. And then it starts putting pressure on your eyes become blurry, you're having depressive thoughts. And so one of the best ways you can do that is managing your histamine, right? So making sure you're not including high histamine foods in your diet. Bananas, apples, sulfur can create a histamine response, especially for me, a really bad one. Um, but you can get these. Ben Lynch has a company called Seeking Health.
Hmm.
He has a thing called histamine nutrients. They're a godsend for me when I was really, really struggling. Like I could literally feel the anxiety disappear as I would take one of these things. And I was anxious all the time. I normally in my life, I'm like this guy who my fuse is way over here. And it takes me a long time. When I'm in chronic pain, it resets the fuse to over here, right? Everything is like a snap judgment because histamine creates the fight or flight response. And that's a reaction, not a response. And even when I'm trying to talk myself out of it, I still find myself reacting. And I'm like, God, I can't even control this response. So a double polymorphism, meaning both parents gave you an MTHFR gene that is slow, can often misdiagnose as bipolarism.
Oh, wow.
So it can be highly impactful. And that's why I think a lot of my Italian brothers in America struggle so poorly, because if you're Italian, you have a high rate chance of having a double polymorphism. And now you come to America and you're eating all this pasta and bread that's sprayed with folic acid, and it's causing all this anxiety, and then that's leading to depression. And the interesting thing is that they'll tell you the reason we do it is to reduce neural tube defects in women. And on face value, that sounds really great. But when you realize there's only about 4,000 a year, they cut it down to about 3,000. They're rarely fatal. I was diagnosed with one. So why do we need to spray it on the entire grain supply? So the other interesting thing is in high doses, folic acid acts as a neurotoxin. So just for a child that we're going to send our child to school with a Flintstone vitamin, they're a third of the way to the upper limit, which is going to start acting like a neurotoxin just by eating that Flintstone chewable. Then they have a muffin or a piece of toast or something like that. Well, now they're about a half the way before they've even stepped foot in school. Then at school, they have a snack or a slice of pizza or whatever. Now they're really close to this upper limit, and they're exhibiting ADHD behavior.
Hmm.
And so now we're going to go put them on Adderall or Ritalin, because guess what we're doing tomorrow? We're feeding them the same exact way. And it takes 48, 72 hours for this folic acid to metabolize out of the body. So we're just building it up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And now our children are going to school. And especially when they're sitting under LED lights, it's constantly flickering in their brain. Their eyes aren't seeing it. And studies show that when you put kids under LED lights, they're more rambunctious. So it's like, it's this perfect cornucopia of like trying to find ways to make our society anxious and depressed, and then normalize it with, online, better help and, things like that, to make it all just seem like this is how everybody's feeling now. And it's really shouldn't be. I think it's way more food induced than anything else.
Right. I
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. I think that a lot of stuff can be changed through your diet and your healthy habits. I also believe that the medication that is offered, especially to kids, is just horrible. It's
Yeah.
horrible. And as a foster parent, a lot of kids that came to my home were already on that medication, and I did everything in my power to get them off.
Mhm.
And I had one, he was a teenager, he's 14, came to me, and very hyper, super hyper. And I was like, okay, he's hyper. So I take him to the doctor. The doctor's like, he needs to go to the psychologist. Psychologist says he needs, Ritalin. He was on it for one day, the smallest dose. And the very first dose he took, I was like, what's wrong with him? Like something's wrong with him. And I asked him, I said, hey, are you okay? And he gave me the best analogy. He said, I feel like I'm in honey and I can't get out. And I was like, I'm using that because that is a great analogy for
Yeah.
exactly how you're acting. And he goes, I don't, and I thought, you know what? He took that first dose that day. I called the psychologist. I said, he's not taking this ever again.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, we've got to give him something. I said, just let him outgrow it. He outgrew it. I
Oh,
said,
good. Good.
no
Well, you're probably
medication,
eating better in
you
your
know,
home. He
you
probably
know.
wasn't, exposed to whatever diet or whatever
Mhm.
environment that where he came from before. And I can't imagine, we mentioned like my last name means orphan, and I've
Yeah.
always thought that I wanted to foster or adopt or something like that. So I really want to commend you for that. That's like a really amazing thing. But
Oh, thank
you
you.
realize these kids are, I volunteer for a place called Covenant House. It's where,
Yeah.
kids and, high school age kids get thrown out of their homes, and they get to go to this dorm style living arrangement where they live forever. And so we sleep out late at night, one night in a box, with a bunch of other sleepers. But the stories that they tell, of how they, rode the subway back and forth all night, because they had no home to go to, or they would sleep in like the waiting room of like an apartment complex, and then go to school the next day and graduate and then go to college. And so,
Mm.
yeah, we need to protect our kids.
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot to that out there. I know a lot of kids too also, um, they come from a situation where they didn't have food in the home. So, they're hoarding and stealing and stuff and everything. They're like, oh my gosh, I came to this house that has all this food, and like they take it like a chickmunk, and
Yeah.
they want to stuff their cheeks, but they're
Yeah.
stuffing it in their pants pocket and in their socks. And I was like, man, this kid has taken all of this food. And I remember saying, it's okay to eat. It's okay to eat food, but you don't want to eat all of that food because you're going to get sick.
Yeah.
Let's just work on, baby steps, let's not divulge and, eat the whole pantry in one day. And that's a really hard thing to teach kids that have gone without food because they see it and they just want to take all of it because they think they're never going to get it again. They don't
Right.
trust that trust factor is gone. Like that meal's not going to be there tomorrow, so I'm taking it
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, it's
So they eat on,
PTSD. Yeah, like
yeah.
PTSD, and I just relate that back to pain, which is an interesting thing. So, it takes a little while to break, from PTSD. But so as I would walk, when I was in really bad chronic pain, and so I still have some stiffness and some pain and, some things that, whatever, but it's nothing, like it was before. And obviously I'm competing at a high level. But, sometimes, you get a twinge or whatever. And so they're like common, like they are in the same places all the time. So you're very familiar with them. So when they go away and like you see something that needs to be picked up, you're like, oh, initially you're like, oh, I'm going to be in pain when I go do that. And they're like, oh no, I don't have that pain anymore. So you have to like the PTSD that comes along with chronically being in pain. And, I talk to people like one of the way that it manifests into frustration is just like something as simple as taking the garbage out, your whole back just doesn't want to do it. And all your triceps are pulling on you, and you're getting this fire that's burning inside of you. And this very simple task of just things are falling over now. And it's like a disaster scene because you're just trying to hurry up so much because you're in pain. And so when that goes away and the noise goes away, and you're able to just sort of operate in life the way you're supposed to, like at the speed of nature, I call it, right? It just becomes a life worth living all over again, to where before you're just like, how can I get through the next day like this? Like I can't do it. But you just keep doing it when you're in chronic pain because people are counting on you. But not like when the first thing that came apart in my body happened, I knew that I was going to get everything, right? It was just like, holy cow, if that reaction can happen, I'm going to get the rest of it. And that had been the process. And so when I put together the plan, it's not a method, it's not like a course. It's like, here's a set of tools that are all natural, but all backed in science. So you can be intentional in how you use them, and so it creates a shortcut to put your body in a better position to heal. And so you don't hit some of like the obstacles that I ran into. Like, for example, when I supplement with sulfur, MSM, take Epsom salt baths, my body doesn't detox that very well, puts me into depression and anxiety pretty bad. So now it's like, okay, well, if you take these supplements, it's going to help the body metabolize these things. So if you're going to take on these practices, you might want to consider taking this course of action to mitigate any poor response. But I also give people things like, breathing through your nose, right? Like I have not my whole life breathed through my nose very well. It's kind of a mouth breather. And I remember as a second grader, a doctor asking me that question. And I've always my whole life held on to that question. Why did he ask it? It's like another thing that was put in front of me to figure out. When you breathe through your nose, one, you're resetting your parasympathetic nervous system, right? Because you're utilizing fat as a fuel source. And so then your brain knows that you're not in danger. When you breathe through your mouth, you're going to use sugar, glycogen, as its fuel source. So your body's like, oh, I need energy right now. But what else happens when you're breathing through your nose is you're taking L-arginine, which is an amino acid, converting it to nitric oxide. Nitric oxide keeps clots from forming in your body. So now, if I'm eating all this pizza that I was eating when I kind of started getting sick, and if I was able to breathe through my nose, I still would have had clot formation, just not so much of it, right? And so, a really interesting thing about how this modern society is trying to damage us. So now, nitric oxide is seen as this very needed molecule, which it is. So now they create beetroot powder.
Mm.
Well, beets are filled with oxalic acid, which create oxalates. So when you're taking this beetroot powder, because it's been broken down, the oxalic acid is going to come out through your gut because it's a nanoparticle and create kidney stones all throughout your soft tissue. So all these people are taking this beetroot powder. What they're doing is they're dumping oxalic acid, which become kidney stones, into their system, and then eventually they're going to have all these kidney stones in their muscles and wherever else. and they're not going to know what to blame it on because no one's told them that, hey, taking this is going to cause this rock formation in your body later. So,
Wow, that's crazy because I love beets,
well,
especially in
beets
the
are
can.
fine. Eating beets are
You know,
fine, yeah. But when you break them down, the same thing
yeah,
with spinach smoothies, right?
powder.
And if you go on my Instagram, you can see I had a big rock come out of my chest. It looked like a pumice stone because you do these cleanses and the rocks will
Yes.
come out through your skin. So the first time I did it, it felt like I was laying on the beach. It felt like sand was like everywhere all over my body. They were just coming out. And,
Mm,
you know, they're kidney stones. And so they're tearing you up inside. They're reducing the sulfur response. They're stealing iron from the muscle. They're stealing hyaluronic acid away from the soft tissue. They're doing all sorts of things to mess you up because it's a plant defense chemical.
that's crazy. So I do have
Yeah.
one more question as we
Yes.
start to wrap up here. So you are the founder of Undo Me, and I did check out your website a little bit. Tell our listeners exactly what that is, and you know what it offers, what you do to help, what goes with it. Um,
Yeah.
if we order product from you, do we get to keep in touch with you? Do you tell us, hey, take this, don't take that, or can you give us a
Yeah. Yeah.
little bit of rundown?
So undo.me, and the reason it's spelled undo like you is because I take some Eastern philosophies like Hindu, you know, breathing and grounding and, you know,
Hmm.
things like that, sound therapy. But really the theory of it is how am I going to undo what I've done to myself over the course of this life? And so there's two main things there. There's my supplement, which is flexibility fuel. And so it's an essential amino acid based supplement for, you know, brain and muscle health. But then there's six other compounds in there that you can all find on my website if you just want to order it off Amazon instead of buying from me that are basically adding an electron to the thing that's causing pain to then cause it to be cleaved so the body can break it down. So that's now when you, and I can't make any claims or anything like that, but if you start using it, you will probably feel something very quickly. It's very common for people to say, hey, this is, you know, my something's coming loose or whatever. Then there's the method, the undo method. It's a playbook that basically gives you an education on why you're in chronic pain, like what pain is. We talk about the pain receptors and how they're being activated all the time by this hardened, congested tissue, what's causing the tissue to come like that, and how you eliminate the things in your diet or your life that are causing that event and then how they can be broken down. So there are other supplements on my website that you can add to Flexibility Fuel that are through Amazon affiliate links, but my only supplement is Flexibility Fuel. Now, when you go to the Undo method, there's a platform there. It's very much like Facebook. You create a free profile. There's a bunch of freebies, the world's greatest shopping list, some meal plans. There's going to be a glycation food list, but you can ask as many questions there as you want for free. There's no cost to that at all. If you want to buy the program, it's $196.33. You get a free bottle of flexibility fuel, plus every update that I'm going to do to this, every edition. And I'm going through an update right now, making it a little bit more digestible by people because I get a little technical sometimes with better graphics. Or for $13.69 a month, and you can get through it in a week, right? For people who may not be working, may not, you know, have a lot of money, take screenshots, record it. I don't care what you do, but get yourself educated on what's causing your pain so you can know who the enemy is. And then you can start taking steps to defeat that enemy. So it's the program and the supplement are like the two things that I think are going to be very beneficial to anybody that's either in chronic pain or looking to avoid like future chronic pain.
Right. Now, I was doing a little bit of research on chronic pain. My mom lived with neuropathy and chronic pain. I mean, I don't know anybody that at some point in time in their life has not had some type of pain. So you know, I definitely know that we've all endured it. And I was telling you before we started recording that I have really bad pain in my hands. Now, I still use my hands. I know there's days when I don't use my hands that they get really stiffened up, like they'll stiffen up on me.
Yeah.
And my aunt had a problem with it. And so did my mom, and so did my grandmother. So I literally thought it was just genetics. I thought it was just Oh, great. My hands are going to be their hands and my kids' hands, and it went
Yeah.
down. And so my aunt literally would have to pry her hands open in the morning.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, I'm not there yet. So I got to keep my hands busy. I got to I stretch them and I massage them. I soak them.
Yeah.
I do different stuff with
How are
them.
you treating your forearms? Because a lot of pain, hand stiffness will come from your forearms because this is where everything pulls down, right?
Right.
So you got to make sure you're really massaging, breaking up the scar tissue in here. But so two lotions. So one, I mean, you should definitely try my supplement, but two lotions that you can use that are really good. Evening primrose oil will help hydrate the fascia and help break down some of that scar tissue, as well as vitamin E oil. And so they're both really great antioxidants. Use those together, right? And I think you're going to see a little bit of improvement in your hands, but
Okay.
push it to where you don't want to push until you're adding something that's going to help break down the chemical bonds. So when you get that on there, you're going to want to stretch slowly, but over time, push it a little bit further every day or every week that you go to kind of help release those chemical bonds a little bit more. But the evening primrose and the vitamin E oil should be in there helping break up some of the stuff that's causing damage for you.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely interested in trying your product for sure and seeing how it feels. I think what I would like to do is try it for 30 days and have you come back on and I can
I
tell you
would
all
love
about it.
to. Yeah. And Flex, anybody that wants to buy it, Flex is a discount code. So it'll
Okay.
keep everything under $50. It should keep it under $50. And if you order more than one, there's only one shipping fee. So sometimes if people are going to order two at a time, you're going to save a little bit there too.
Okay, is that information on your website for the discount and all of that
No,
or
no, it's just you can use it. Anyone that's listening to it can use it.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be there forever. So you never have to worry about it expiring.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So the flex is
Flex.
the
Yeah.
code? Gotcha.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, well that's awesome. Yeah, I was looking at those products this morning, and like I said, I was looking at your page, and I was wondering, like, okay, where if someone went to your page, where would you suggest they started? Like, do you
Yeah.
just there's a lot to
I
offer
just take
there,
the
and that like
supplement.
everything.
Yeah, the supplement is the best way to start. I really think it's kind of I mean, it's actively working right away. I can't say how it's working, you know what I mean? But it's helping the body to remove these things. And so once it's in your system, on an empty stomach, because you don't want it to be in there digesting your food, you want it to be an empty stomach. And the best way to take it is 3/4 of a scoop in the morning before you start your day, and then the rest of the scoop closer to bedtime, because bedtime is when you're trying to do some healing as well. And so most people are just like, oh man, what's this? And it just kind of, you're getting an
Yeah.
alert that, hey, help me out, kind of help me, break this thing down. So I think the best thing for people to do is start there. And then once they're convinced that there's some benefit here, go ahead and check out the rest of the program. Right. I also want to do free presentations of it. I just haven't gotten there yet. I'm, really want to sell the product because it's so beneficial to so many people so far that if I can just give people the information for free, but in a way where I present it, I'd love to, figure that piece out too. But I've tried TikTok lives and things like that, and that just doesn't, I don't know. It's,
It's
and
not
most
your
people,
thing.
here's the problem. This is what I want to leave with this is
Okay.
a diagnosis is a death sentence. Do not
Yeah.
believe your diagnosis. Do not get in your tribe of that diagnosis, because once you do, a diagnosis is only so a doctor can now prescribe you something.
Right.
15 to 25% of diagnoses are wrong, and a lot of people don't even question your diagnosis. So how many of those that haven't questioned it have been given a wrong diagnosis? A diagnosis of chronic pain by doctors is a guess. There's no way for this stuff to show up in imaging. So arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, fibromyalgia, regional chronic pain syndrome, juvenile arthritis, all that stuff is happening because of the same factors, right? And then you just have to start working, like understanding what those factors or offenders, enemies are, so you can then find ways to defeat them, right? And all the information's out there. It's like you don't even have to search for, especially with AI now. You can ask AI a question about how do I break down glycation? What's the best polyflavonoid? And it's going to tell you, rutin and quercetin, and maybe some other things that you want to try. So, yeah, the whole platform is for people who are intentional about wanting to heal and keep a positive space in their heart about it, rather than this doesn't work, or people tell me I've never had fibromyalgia, right? When I go into the Facebook message boards because I want to reach people and they just tell me I'm a faker, I'm a snake oil salesman, I never had
Oh, that's
fibromyalgia.
terrible.
And I'm just trying to help. Like I thought I was going to be the hero, hey, everyone, I figured it out, right? I've
Yeah,
been here the whole time
yeah,
for the past 8 years and have sort of, digital relationships with you people and I want
yeah.
everyone to heal and it just is it's a
Working
lot of
though.
pushback. Yeah.
The thing is it worked, and so now they're in disbelief to what you actually had because of what
Yeah.
you made actually worked.
And it's great. They
You
don't
would
even
put the
ask
two
me
together, you would
questions.
think.
Yeah, it's not even like, hey, how does it work? It's like, just ask me something. Like, doubt me, ask me hard questions so I can, teach you what I know. And if it resounds with you, then try it and then tell me it doesn't work. So,
Well,
yeah,
I just want to say thank you so much for coming on here, and I think getting educated is also a part of it. You got to learn because you said some words that I can't even pronounce. So definitely think that getting some education under your belt when it comes to, like you said, figure out, what your pain is, where it's coming from, look it up. Um, Not necessarily run right to the doctor, and get that diagnosis because I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. I believe I've been misdiagnosed. I was told I had cancer in my hand before they even did the biopsy. And I said, I don't have cancer. You're nuts. And the
yeah,
doctor literally asked me when he went in, he was going to take out my whole finger, the whole finger to my wrist. And I said, I am not ET. You cannot have my finger. And
no,
he
yeah,
was like, how are you so sure? And I said, for one, I go, I already knew in my heart, my physical being, and like I feel like God confirmed that I didn't have it, and I
yeah,
didn't. And he was
good.
like, you were very positive with it. And I said, I totally just spoke against it. I knew I didn't have
Yeah.
it,
So
you
let me
know?
talk real quickly. I want to talk about the joints and just leave with this. The
Okay.
skeleton just hangs like a Venetian blind. If you remove all the tissue, all the muscle and fascia, it's all going to fall back into place. Everything that's around the joints is what's becoming compromised and pushing this stuff out of place. When you soften that up, demineralize that, let the body get rid of it, it just is going to fall right back to where it's supposed to be. Like you have to believe, and that has to be your belief system. Otherwise, you're going to think at your joints. You're going to go get a knee replacement or a hip replacement. They're going to cut you open more.
Yep.
You're already in
Yep.
pain. You're
Yep.
not going to do good physical therapy. There's going to be more scar tissue that's going to happen, and it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah,
So,
and it's a long road to take. Like I said, I've had 18 major surgeries and I've been down several of those roads. I dealt with a lot of pain. But I also felt like God healed me in so many different ways because I quit listening to the doctor and I started listening to my body. Even with the medication they put me on, I just said, this medication is making me worse than the symptom that I was diagnosed with. I got to get off from
yeah,
here. And I quit all cold turkey and
good.
ended up losing like 25 pounds. My pain, like the symptoms, like pretty much went away on their own. And I went to the doctor a year later, and he's like, I can't believe that you did that, that you just decided
Yeah.
to go your own avenue. And I said, what,
And
you were
it's a
going to
shame.
kill me, you
The
know?
doctors
So,
only know what they've been told, and I
yeah.
know they've gotten into this business more than likely to be helpful, but they just don't have the tools for it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I want to say thank you again for coming on here. I would love to, excuse me, have you back, especially for my, Until My Watch is Over podcast for dementia, because I think that would be really good for my listeners there. And for all of my listeners that are paying attention today, I hope that you guys got a really good educated episode today on what you can do with your own body when it comes to chronic pain. And if you are struggling with chronic pain, I suggest that you go to Undo Me and you check out the products and ask any questions. Let me know if you have any questions. I will pass them on to Dan and let him know, hey, we got people that are interested. I'll share your information. And I am really grateful that you came. I believe on the spiritual aspect of it, I do believe that if we go back to the old time testament, we will find that a lot of stuff that we are doing today, opposed to what they did back in those days, we benefit ourselves if we kind of went backwards instead of forwards. We're always trying
Yeah.
to go forwards sometimes, and
Yeah.
that's
I
not
think
always the
that's
answer,
no. Yeah.
so
There's a Gnostic belief that the more creation we have, the more um, compromised this world
right.
becomes.
I
You
agree.
know? Yeah.
We
So,
get oversaturated, I think.
yeah.
So, but anyway, thank you again, Dan, for coming on. And to all my listeners, this has been another great and amazing episode of Crushing Strongholds. And until next time, we will be talking to you soon. So, y'all, God bless and take care.